Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks to everyone who's joined us. This is Mac Haddo with the American Kratom Association. We wanted to have this discussion today to provide an update on intelligence that we have gathered both in Texas and in Florida. Both of those states are very important to us. Different proposals, obviously, but I think there's some common themes, and I think there's some events that are going to be happening that everyone should be aware of. First, before I get to that, let me just make a plug for scientific research and a project that's ongoing right now that needs to be more fully subscribed in terms of participants. And just to illustrate how important this scientific research is, when we first started looking at kratom back in 2016, the scientists and all of us in the public policy arena were making statements based on what we thought was true at the time. And yet, as the science has evolved, we've learned a lot more about the number of alkaloids that are in the kratom plant, which are the principal alkaloids, and what their primary effects are in that symphony of alkaloid activity, as has been described, I think, aptly by Chris McCurdy at the University of Florida. Still a lot to learn about which alkaloids and how they interact and how they produce the beneficial effects of kratom and how they protect against the kinds of concerns on the safety profile when they work together. And so that's an important part and component of what we do. And the American Kratom Association has always maintained the position that we will follow the science. And so it's critically important. One of the things that we've learned since 2016 is that rather than characterizing 7-hydroxymetrogenine as an alkaloid, we now know that it in fact is a metabolite that occurs after the harvesting of the kratom plant leaves. And as they are exposed to heat, they start to degrade, and the natural decomposition leads to the development of 7-hydroxymetrogenine. However, never at levels in that process that present a danger to the American public. We now see the explosion of these 7-OH products, and we need to learn and know more about them. Johns Hopkins University is conducting a study on 7-hydroxymetrogenine products led by the lead researcher there, Dr. Kirsten Smith. They need to have more people subscribe to that study so that they can generate the kind of statistically valid data that's required. Essentially, people that are eligible are adults who reside in the United States and who have used a 7-hydroxy product. The experience for those products is preferred to have used them more than once, and they're not going to exclude you if that's the not quite the criteria. But we encourage everyone that knows someone or themselves have experienced this to please enroll in this study. And you can look at your emails. You should have received an invitation to it. We will post it up on the American Kratom Association website so that you can go and enroll in it, because this is a part of our understanding and learning about the effects of various components of the kratom plant, despite the controversy around 7-OH, which of course is swirling right now. And there's a questionnaire that you go through, and fairly easy to get through that process. Let's turn first to where we are with the Texas ban bill. And I can tell you that we're seeing increased activity around the country. Louisiana just had a ban bill filed on Friday. Louisiana's legislature starts late. I think they start the first part of April. So we're starting to see these bills kind of arise there. So we're going to have to react to that, similar to what we're seeing in Texas. And just as a quick update, in states that are currently where kratom is banned, Arkansas had a hearing before the Senate Health Committee, and it was the repeal of that ban, and the KCPA was approved unanimously with a recommendation for due pass, and it was sent to the Arkansas Senate floor, where it will be heard on Monday. We're getting stiff resistance from the governor's office, so we've got some work to do there to educate her on exactly what led to the ban on kratom, and importantly, why the ban was unjustified, and that the proper procedure, of course, is the KCPA. So that's a battle we're ongoing. On Tuesday, there will be hearings both in the Senate and the House in the Rhode Island legislature. And of course, we know last year the Kratom Consumer Protection Act was passed that repealed the ban in Rhode Island. That bill was vetoed by the governor, but in discussions I've had with the governor personally about it, he is committed, assuming we could find a compromise bill, that he would sign it. That compromise is not pretty. It's not the perfect bill. It's not something that we would, if we were designing it, and as we have our model KCPA, would not believe is the best approach. But it is a negotiated framework that the governor can live with according to his policy staff. And so we're hopeful that we can get that legislation through, despite its imperfections, but it eliminates the ban in Rhode Island. Turning to Texas, Senator Perry, as all of you heard in his description of the justification for his filing of the Kratom ban bill, he recognized that there are benefits from Kratom and that there are people who are benefiting from it. But his problem with it was that based on the information he had been provided, that the current KCPA there is ineffective in regulating the bad products. In fact, in the discussion that I had with him, he alleged that that was a position held by the American Kratom Association. It reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of how these kinds of enforcement activities in the dietary supplement space work. It was not our survey that was done. And by the way, the survey was done by Global Kratom Coalition, and it is perfectly appropriate for that information to be gathered and good for them for doing so, and then passing it on to the appropriate regulatory officials in the state of Texas, which happens to be the Attorney General's office, and that was done. The strategic mistake, in my opinion, was that they then issued press releases on it, and it was a press release that Senator Perry handed to me, believing that it was the American Kratom Association who conducted the survey and was acknowledging the failure of the enforcement mechanism within the Texas KCPA. And as I mentioned earlier, in fact, that enforcement mechanism requires and relies upon the enforcement agencies to take action when they are alerted to a violation, as occurred with the survey that was done by the GKC. The fact that the Texas Attorney General's office or local law enforcement people chose, at least for the moment, not to exercise that particular enforcement activity is not the flaw in the law. If you want a law that says that you will have the kind of enforcement mechanism that is sought by some to be 100% perfect, you'll have a Gestapo state. The federal government doesn't do it that way with dietary supplement regulations. It does do it, or ostensibly does it, for drugs. And so the idea here that the KCPA, in trying to supervise or to regulate 7-hydroxymetrogenine, the fact that the enforcement agency that is enforcing it isn't doing their job as they should be doing, is hardly the reason to ban it. And we think that Senator Perry's concerns are misplaced. I'll tell you that a significant thing happened when the hearing took place, because as those of you who were able to watch it, I think that the testimony that was provided, not only by Bob Durkin, a former FDA official, and Dr. Kirsten Smith, and Senator Bramble, who has extensive regulatory experience on the public policy side, all of that was fabulous testimony. But the powerful testimony, in my estimation, that supported the policy and scientific information that was critically important occurred when you had vendors and advocates, consumers of Kratom, testify powerfully and passionately about the value that Kratom has. And while Senator Perry was retreating a little on his claim that, oh, he understood that there are people that benefit from it, the central argument was whether or not we can provide for him an assurance that there is a tougher enforcement mechanism, and we're currently working with his office to do that. The recommendation that was made by another advocacy group that advocates and vendors should not testify was misplaced. It was wrong. And we encourage everyone, every single person that has an interest in this in the form of a manufacturer, a distributor, a retailer, or a consumer to reach out and to communicate with their elected officials on these important issues. Because if we rely upon advocacy groups solely and the lobbyists who represent those advocacy groups, that is a prescription for failure. and we will not win if we solely want the lobbyists to make these kinds of decisions. I'm not discounting, obviously, the value of lobbying, but when the lobbying is supposed to be or designed by strategy to be limited just to the lobbyists talking to these people, that is not a good policy, and we certainly reject that at the American Kratom Association. I think that's critically important for all of us as we move forward here. I have a meeting tomorrow in Austin with Senator Perry's staff and hopefully with Senator Perry himself. And we have a plan that we will propose to him that will help to identify a more effective mechanism for enforcing against products that are barred by the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, to strengthen the product formulation requirements for products that are sold in Texas, and to have a little better enforcement mechanism that currently exists there, which we have experience with in other states. And so hopefully Senator Perry will listen. And the fact that he did not show up on Friday to push his bill, and in fact he told us that he's looking to have a substitute bill. Now, he has not described to us exactly what that substitute bill will contain, but some of the concerns that he expressed were the kinds of retail outlets where Kratom is available. He's operating on the misimpression that somehow gas station convenience stores are bad and smoke shops are bad. We rely upon the advice that's given by the National Institutes on Drug Abuse Director Nora Volkow, where she has testified before Congress and in our congressional briefings and emphasized the importance of Kratom products being properly formulated, properly labeled, and age restricted, and then available at whatever retail outlet that is available in order to allow for people that are struggling with addictions to have access to them. And her argument is a persuasive one. She claims that many people do not access treatment when they're struggling with these kinds of addictions to the available channels for substance abuse disorders because of the stigma that's attached to it. And they simply don't want to enter that treatment process because it certainly gives them a kind of reputation and having to deal with consequences of acknowledging the need for those kinds of services, and they don't seek those services. And she says that in many communities, there simply are not beds available in the substance abuse programs that would allow for those people to enroll. And then, sadly, even where there is a bed available, it is often beyond the financial ability of those individuals to access that treatment. And her view is that Kratom is potentially a valuable harm reduction tool in the battle we have against opioid abuse disorder and the ultimate addiction liability and the fatalities that result from as a consequence of the abuse of these products in the marketplace. So it argues for retail outlets. And by the way, this very negative kind of process they use to say it's gas station heroin. Gas stations have become a dramatically different outlet for retail products. They just don't sell gas. You walk into most of the chain gas stations today, you have markets where they're selling, convenience stores that sell an array of products far beyond what you typically would have seen 20 or 25 years ago. And so we need to come into the current, the 21st century and look at what the reality of what those outlets are. And hopefully we'll be able to persuade Senator Perry that that's certainly not the stigma that he needs to attach to whether it's it, of course, is an issue with the gas station. And on smoke shops, it's important that smoke shops responsibly sell only to those that are eligible on an age gating process. And we think that many of them do adhere to it. Where they're not doing it, then they obviously should be called out and subject to the enforcement actions of a state agency. It is interesting, we received a report where Lieutenant Governor Patrick and Senator Perry on a hemp issue went to a local smoke shop in Austin and attempted to purchase some products in that smoke shop, hemp products, and the clerk behind the counter apparently refused to sell it to them unless they produced identification, which is the law in Texas. And interestingly, Lieutenant Governor Patrick said, "Well, I'm Lieutenant Governor Patrick," and the clerk responded and said, "I understand, but you still have to provide identification, which is the law, and it should have been praised by the lieutenant governor and the senator rather than being criticized. So I think that that's potentially an opportunity we have that we can discuss and we can work with Senator Perry on those issues, and that we pledge to do it. But we want to keep the channel of communication of all Texas advocates pounding on these members so that they understand that when this bill does get, the substitute bill does get presented in whatever form Senator Perry agrees to do it, that it allows for consumer access, it does not have a ban, and that it's not so tight that consumers will not have access to these products that they are benefiting from, which even the senator agrees is the case. So I think that if we can get around this argument that the bad outweighs the good in his mind, that we can show him a responsible pathway. We also have some proposals for him that we hope he will consider that will look at the longer term landscape in Texas, where he can be reassured that Kratom is just not benefiting, but it is safe. And of course, that's the most important category that we need to push on as we go forward. We'll report back to you as we learn more after the visit with Senator Perry and how we proceed in Texas. In the state of Florida, first, let me say thank you to every single person who was able to arrange their schedules to go to Tallahassee and participate in that hearing. And I know that it was extremely frustrating to be scheduled at the end of the hearing when there was no time left before they were pushing to adjourn and to only have 30 seconds to make your case because that was disrespectful. But it's the process in legislation and the way things work. In the state of Arkansas, as an example, when we had a dozen or more advocates that were there. We had Dr. Ed Boyer from Ohio State University and Dr. Kirsten Smith from Johns Hopkins and Dr. Jack Henningfield from Johns Hopkins and Penny Associates there to testify. And at the conclusion of the introduction by our sponsor, Senator Letting, and myself, and we discussed it, there was a motion by a committee member. And this was a committee we thought we were going to lose in because of the way that the scheduling went. But it was persuasive when they saw what the bill actually did and learned the history of how the ban actually occurred in Arkansas, that a member of the committee moved for immediate consideration, which is a non-debatable motion. And if it passes, it cuts off any further testimony. And that's exactly what happened. They passed unanimously the motion to move to immediate consideration and then move to recommend unanimously do pass to the Arkansas Senate. That left these three scientists who had traveled to Little Rock, Arkansas, and the dozen or more advocates, many of whom had come from out of state, sitting there without having had the ability to even testify. So these kinds of things happen in the legislative process. They are frustrating, but they are part of the deliberative process that we simply have to follow. But I can tell you that the more than 30-second testimonials had an impact because Representative Owen is now saying he's open to changes in his bill. Now we confront some real challenges with the bills because currently the originally filed bill, House Bill 1489, matched directly Senate Bill 1734 that was presented by Senator Collins. Those bills were, in our opinion, way too over-regulatory. But what has happened since is fascinating. Senator Collins has introduced a substitute bill, and Representative Owen has also introduced a substitute bill, which are vastly different. And on the House side, Representative Owen's substitute bill really mirrors the hemp bill that was proposed and was vetoed by the governor last year. And it is a horribly overregulation framework that really puts a lot of us in deep trouble because it essentially, despite what you may hear from other groups, it eliminates extract products. It penalizes and puts out of business largely any kava kratom bar, which are immensely popular in the state of Florida. And I think that the testimony of the people that were at that hearing, even though they were given short periods of time, the number of people there being able to express your frustration with the current framework of that bill was heard by Representative Owen. And so I think that it is very encouraging that we obviously are now being able to work through all of these issues in a reasonable and deliberative way in discussions with these members. Uh, the one thing that was encouraging is that to the amendment that was sponsored by or submitted by Representative Owens, we presented 21 amendments that we thought were critically important to restore back the intent of and the proper regulatory framework for the KCPA in Florida. The House Agriculture Budget Committee was supposed to have heard the substitute bill that passed out of the committee that everyone attended last week on tomorrow. And now it is not on the agenda, so I think that's an encouraging sign. The reason that it's not on the agenda is that in the cumulative evaluation of both House Bill 1489 substitute bill and SB 1734 in its substitute bill on the Senate side, the cumulative fiscal note, meaning the cost it will incur for the state to regulate kratom under this framework, which is supported by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and other advocacy groups, will be more than $15 million. Last year, when we got into this battle with the Florida Department of Agriculture, where they were trying to overregulate and to substantially add burdens on consumers and manufacturers in the state of Florida, their price tag was $3.5 million, and we fought against that, and that bill died because of that fiscal note last year. And the idea that there would be a 15 million plus fiscal note on Florida's new kratom bill is astounding, and I think it's gotten the attention of the realist in the legislature and certainly on the House Agriculture Budget Committee, that's not a number that can be swallowed in order to regulate a product that is a dietary and botanical supplement. It is not a controlled substance. It is not derivative of a controlled substance in any way, shape, or form. And that's the model that they're currently using for hemp, saying that THC content, and they're precisely adding a regulatory framework around kratom as though it has the same components and has the same classification as a controlled substance at the federal level, which we all know is not true. On the Senate side, Senator Collins has rejected dozens of amendments that we have proposed, and it's currently a fascinating dialogue going back and forth because the FDACS, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, is anti-kratom, and they want it to be regulated in onerous ways to essentially limit or eliminate kratom products in the state of Florida that are available to the citizens. So the question now comes is, what can we do? And the answer to that is to be vigilant. We currently have about 3,200 signatures on the advocate portal in the state of Florida. We need to double that. We need your help to double that so that we can go and instead of having email boxes filled up and barraged by kratom advocates, which sometimes is a good thing, this case it may be counterproductive. We need to show a list of those kratom advocates in the state of Florida that are opposed to this bill, and we want to be able to present it in a gross number. Obviously, being able to back it up with the names if we're challenged on it and the contact information with an email. We need to fill that portal, and that's available to everyone. Circulate it to all of your networks. Encourage people, if they haven't yet done so, they need to sign up and understand that this is the way that we're going to get the attention of the Florida legislators who are wrestling with this double whammy that they're currently fighting with. And you can look to the protectkratom.org/research for the 708 thing. We also have our petition up, but all of you should have it by now, and you should be circulating it, recirculating it, so that we can get this message out and increase those numbers of Florida consumers who are advocating for responsible KCPA legislation and not a kratom bill that is going to misclassify kratom as a controlled substance, nor impose burdens that are properly assessed against a controlled substance or a semi-controlled substance, which kratom is not. For those that want to join it, it's up on the chat board. It's www.protectkratom.org/Florida. circulate that. I encourage you to do it. We need it. It will help us to overcome our opponents right now because advocates speak and they speak loudly when these members. We will, as this legislation progresses, if it does, we will call upon specific targeted campaigns to specific legislators who are the influencers. But we need this baseline of hopefully a goal 6,000 Florida consumers. There are over 1 million Kratom consumers in Florida, as all of you know, and so we're at a very low number right now. We need to strengthen that. So having said that, I'm going to open up for question and answers. I know we got a couple that are up now. You can simply click on the Q&A and we are going to, and I'll go through these questions. Amanda says, thanks for doing this today. What can you do to help in all states? I've been to 6 band hearings from Massachusetts, New Hampshire. These things, thank you first. These things come up. We have 6 states that have banned kratom. The last one was Rhode Island in 17, all at the behest of the FDA. And now we're seeing the same thing happening in these local jurisdictions. And I can tell you that one of the oddest things about this is that the groups that are now promoting this are funded by the federal government through SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Group, and through CDC. They give grants to these local drug groups, and they then convert the message into kratom being bad. And so we're working now on a strategy to get members of Congress to challenge what's going on with the use of federal dollars, where there's no control over what those funds are used for when they advocate for a policy that is not endorsed by, nor is there any basis to do it at the federal level. And so I think that that's something that we can work on. In each of the states where you're seeing a ban bill, you're also going to see a KCPA. The one in Louisiana was a little bit of a surprise to us with the ban, but there is a KCPA, and we're going to continue to strengthen and work on those where that's done. And we will do that in every state. This year, we've beaten bans. We beat them in Nebraska. We beat them in North Dakota. We beat them in Montana. We beat them in many states where they proposed the anti-kratom people have significantly obviously been voices that we need to work on in order to get our message across. Michael asks, are Trump's new tariffs going to impact the Indonesian market, exports, and vendors and consumers? The answer to that is yes. I just put up a Twitter post or an X post this morning that highlighted the fact that when you have the Indonesian government in imposing their regulations currently and putting a 30% tariff, and then when you add to it the U.S. tariffs that Trump just imposed of 32%, you can see the significant impact. In my opinion, it's going to do a couple of things. One, it will create a strong pressure to bypass these tariff mechanisms with a black market. And with the black market, you get products that are untested, you get contaminated products coming through, likely exposed with microbials like Salmonella and E. coli, all that are dangerous to consumers, and that will paint a target on kratom because the black market produces bad products and bad raw materials. And so that's a deep concern to us. The alternative is the costs are going to go up dramatically. If you impose those tariffs in Indonesia, which are part of their regulatory scheme that they just put out, and then you have the U.S. tariffs on top of it, you can see that you're going to see a dramatic increase in the price at retail of kratom products, and that's bad for consumers, and that will drive a black market where consumers are going to look for cheaper products along the way. So that's just the current status. We hope that the resolution of these tariffs will be done as President Trump says he wants to do, is to get to zero tariffs. And maybe that'll be part of the discussion. But Indonesia owns the fact that they imposed these tariffs, which they said were needed in order to secure the supply chain and provide adequate testing of raw materials before they leave Indonesia. I think it was too much. I think that the pie in the sky kind of thinking of some of the Indonesian officials that drove that number was not realistic. And I think it's going to harm not only American consumers, it will harm Indonesian farmers who are indigent, humble people living in dire circumstances who have no other alternative to make a living than the naturally grown ubiquitous kratom products or trees in their areas. And I think that they've cut off their nose to spite their face on this, and hopefully cooler heads will prevail. On the question on Illinois legislation, uh, this is one of the frustrating things that we're going through, where there are competing language proposals being given by various advocacy groups. I can simply tell you that it is our goal at the AK to open a marketplace for properly formulated products that are safe and meet the safety standards, that are properly labeled and age restricted. We do not advocate, nor do we put in place any provisions that will be a restriction to a kratom product entering the marketplace that meets those standards. We do not advocate for an anti-competitive marketplace, and you can make your own evaluation as to what these other proposals are doing. Because, for example, you see things that to me are unexplainable that add to the cost and restrict what's happening. In the state of Florida is a perfect example. The language that's in the state of Florida right now, whether they want to admit it or not, and it's in the definitions of a kratom product, excludes extract products. That is anti-competitive. That is designed specifically to advantage one product. You see the limitation on the per serving size of 40 milligrams of kratom. That is anti-competitive. That is for one product. And that's the kind of thing that we have to contend with. So we're going to continue. In Illinois, we have competing legislation that has slowed everything down. It threatens the ability to get a bill passed. And it is silliness. It is shooting ourselves in the foot, and yet we can't come to any agreement to stand down. We worked with both the Botanicals for Better Health and Wellness and with the Global Kratom Coalition to come up with model legislation that we could all sign off on. The Botanicals for Better Health and Wellness and the AK agreed to the language, and conceptually, Global Kratom Coalition agreed to the language, but they said they wouldn't stand up and guarantee that they would endorse it in testimony before state legislators, giving them the out to put whatever provision they want. And unfortunately, many of those provisions appear to be on their face to be directly anti-competitive because they're promoting only a couple of products. So this is really something that is very unfortunate. Amanda correctly makes the point. United Way has donated $200,000 to vote against kratom in Nashua, New Hampshire. That's part of that money's coming through to CDC. It certainly is disappointing, and we keep fighting, and hopefully we'll get the true message out about kratom, because the science is absolutely terrific as we go forward. Drew asked about what we can do from Nevada to help. Well, let me tell you something that's going on in Nevada right now, which is very disturbing, and that is that the Southern Nevada Health Department is banning all kratom products, and they're going store by store, and they're justifying their ban on kratom products in the stores because the governor vetoed the upgraded KCPA, upgraded in the sense that it would have provided for more regulatory controls over bad products. And the governor, for reasons that are still unknown to us, vetoed that bill, but the current KCPA is still in effect. And so we're hiring attorneys to go out there and fight in the Southern District of Nevada, which is in the Las Vegas, Clark County area. Very disturbing that this kind of thing happens, but their reliance, when you ask them, they say the FDA says that kratom is banned, and they cite the FDA and kratom website, which is nuanced because that actually says that if it's sold as a dietary ingredient, and as long as you don't sell it as a dietary ingredient, it still should be treated as a food, technically, not a conventional food, but under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, should be treated as a food. And that's the way they should look at it. But this is a big problem. But those of you in Nevada can join in looking at each of these state bans that are promoted, because they will impact and drive national policy. And so join us in the fight on these states. Sign up and let's do what we can to work together and see if we can fight back and join everywhere from every corner of the United States. Join in these battles in order to convince legislators that they need to keep a free and open marketplace of safely formulated, properly labeled, and age-restricted kratom products. Jennifer, thanks for what happened in Arkansas. Thank you, Jennifer, for being there. I was so proud of those advocates, even though they didn't get to speak. They went out on the steps of the Arkansas Capitol and they made videos which were circulated to the members of the Arkansas Senate. They were fabulous videos. These are passionate, wonderful people that spent enormous amounts of time and their own resources to get to to Arkansas. Some had some help from vendors, and thank you for those that supported them. We need those voices, and they truly are uh, is really something. Brian asked about the referral, which is typical, by the way, of House Bill 1489 to go to other committees. It's been referred to the Commerce Committee. We have not seen a date for it. We have a conversation scheduled with Representative Owen tomorrow to get an idea of what his plans are, what his new revisions will be. And from that, we'll be able to report back. I'm going to be in Texas, but we have a conference call with our lobbyists and Representative Owen scheduled tomorrow morning. And we'll hopefully be able to work through something that happens down there. Sarah says that they've been following closely and informing customers of sharing the link and share their voice. In the worst case forward, when does this go into effect? There is a date at which the laws take effect in each state, and it varies, usually a couple months after. I'll have to look up what the Florida bill actually says, and maybe I can do it while we're sitting here talking. But the enactment date is determined after the governor signs it, and then the specific legislation, of course, will say what the enactment date is. Sometimes they allow for the enactment date to be pushed out so that they can get supply chains of products moving through the system. So it depends on the state and the accommodations that are made at the end. So I'm just scrolling through to see if we can get the enactment date on January 1st, 2026. So that's if this passes, and we're going to do everything we can to not let it pass, that would be your deadline. And remember, the just the prospect of a $15 million plus fiscal note in a state that's struggling with their budget right now, for which there is no offset from any registration fees by vendors, nor is there any excise tax or anything like that. This is a straight out of the pockets of taxpayers. And I don't think that's going to fly. And I don't think the governor would let that fly because it certainly is not only over-regulation, but it is woefully, woefully over-regulating the Kratom marketplace, and it's unfair, and I don't think people are going to buy it, but we'll see how that plays out. Stephanie says, in Texas, you have a KCPA and thought we meant we were safe. You'd think you would. We are always at the cusp of these legislators who decide they want to jump into the mix. And we're in a mess right now in Texas, but we're going to fight back hard, and hopefully we can win when we get that. The way that they do the ban, Stephanie, is that they impose a scheduling of kratom in Texas as a Schedule I substance and repeal the existing KCPA. That's the way they get around that. Justin says that anyone who's an online vendor in Florida cares about online vending. We have to make our voices heard because they're going to kill online vending in the state. And you look at the provisions of that. They are onerous. They are ridiculous. And if nothing else that jumps out at you, you see that they require that for every transaction that's done over on the internet, that you have to list it as a Kratom product. And that is a red flag for credit card processors because they are biased against Kratom processing. And if you call it a Kratom product as required by this proposed law, you're out of the market. So absolutely, Justin's correct. And I'm going to recognize here in a second. I think he's got his hand up as we get through these. Question, is there any scientific proof that opioid deaths are down since the launch of 7-OH products? If the 7-OH people are claiming that they're able to fight back on opioid deaths, they're smoking dope themselves because it's not true. There is a general reduction in opioid deaths that has occurred throughout the United States since the crisis that really increased dramatically during the COVID pandemic. And now we're coming off of those numbers, but the numbers are still extraordinarily high. And Kratom is recognized by the National Institute on Drug Abuse in report language signed by President Biden saying that this is a harm reduction tool that ought to be accepted. And so I would say to Missy's questions, no, there's no proof. And if they're saying that that's the case, they're simply blowing smoke. Chris says in Tennessee, there's a non-binding resolution. We decided, based on discussions with the sponsor, that we didn't want to get into that fight because it was a resolution, non-binding, and it does call for strict regulations. And we're going to be in Tennessee next year working with that sponsor. The emotions are high because of the basis for it, because of a claimed death associated with Kratom. But we are going to be working between now and the next legislative session. And we've been in Tennessee before, and we got stopped by the Senate chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee cold, even though it passed the House. So that's a uh, really an important thing that we need to fight for. And so we're going to be on the ground in Tennessee. And Chris, please send us an email with your email to kratomprotectors.org, and we can get you on our list so that you can participate with us. Brent, and I'd love to see a message like this. Brent support. He's a physician in Columbus, Ohio. Wants to help. We're about to have the Ohio KCPA filed. We're still in ongoing negotiations with the Department of Agriculture in the state of Ohio and with the Department of Pharmacy. And these are not easy discussions because they bring different biases to the discussions. They're very difficult, but we're at least getting some progress that we've been making. So stand by on that, and something that we need to be watching. David asked, with the layoffs occurring at the FDA, do we have any sense of whether some of those who were or will be laid off are part of the FDA anti-kratom contingency? David, this is a great question. So the fact is that the strongest anti-kratom advocate that was at the FDA was a senior policy advisor in the commissioner's office, and he retired in early January. So I think that deflated a lot of the inertia behind the anti-kratom movement. The one thing that is clear from the reported layoffs and terminations at the FDA, which has taken a substantial cut, is that the controlled substances staff is still intact, which I think is reasonable. You expect it would be, but they harbor some of the anti-kratom sentiment at the FDA, and so we're going to have to be working hard with the new commissioner and with the Secretary of HHS to provide guidance to the agency about what the kratom policy should be. And we're working right now with the Office of National Drug Control Policy in the White House with the Secretary's office. And we've made an outreach, not yet had responses from the FDA commissioner, the newly installed one. So we're working on getting that thing done in order to have a discussion about it. We think that we're starting to see a turning of the tide. And remember that the FDA is burdened by their own science. And so they have to deal with that, the safety study that they did, and it undermines their previous claims that kratom is per se dangerous because now they have their own data that argues against that. They still maintain that their concern about kratom is based on the fact that people are self-medicating with it, and they want people that are suffering with opioid use disorder to go through a supervised program under a medical professional's direction, meaning a doctor or people that are running these substance abuse clinics. And so we've got to have some work being done there as we go forward. So we'll keep you updated on that big battle going on. Um, Anthony asked if we can get a list of those who provide so we can go after those government agencies. Absolutely. It's SAMHSA and CDC giving grants. We've got congressional people now exploring that, and they will be weighing in with those agencies about restricting the utilization of those funds. Generally, these grants are given to these anti-drug agencies because they do at the local level because they do great work. But they've decided that their cause du jour becomes kratom as a part of their major policy agenda, and we think it absolutely has to be driven by science, not this nonsense that somehow an anti-kratom faction of whatever their advocacy group is doing it. And all of this is wrapped, by the way, in this. We got to protect our kids. And the data that's available right now about utilization of kratom products by children is non-existent. And yet it's an easy thing to say, oh, I just want to protect my kids. And it's silliness, but it's what we have to contend with and deal with along the way. David asked if the ban in Texas goes through, would it be September 1st? Good question. I don't remember the exact date. I'm going to look it up while we're doing this as we go forward. While I'm doing that, let's see. Brian says, as Florida 1489 is structured with the food license and alcohol requirements, would cafes, convenience stores be forbidden from selling kratom? I think it does. Now, that's one thing that Representative Owen wants to resolve to the extent that the language is squishy enough that it gives the authority to the regulators, then you can expect that that's going to be the outcome along the way. So we're going to have to work on that and see if we can really work this whole situation to inform these legislators that what's happening here is not what the law says if they grant to the enforcement agencies broad authority, because then you've got a real problem as we go through here. So that's part of the difficulty that we're going to be working on. Um, let's see. I'm going to look up the Texas thing real quick here. Then Anthony asked what the status on the federal KCPA. We are submitting the revised language for the federal KCPA, and it will be filed, we hope, in the next 2 weeks. We plan on April 23rd to have a Hill Day on Capitol Hill with vendors that are coming into Washington for a meeting that we're holding. And it is our hope that we can get up on the Hill and target specific offices to advocate for co-sponsors to join that legislation. So the federal KCPA is coming through. And back to Texas, it is September 1st if it passes. And so we'll obviously continue. Hopefully, we're not going to let it pass in the form that it's in right now. Okay, with that, I'm going to recognize Justin Franklin. Justin, you raised your hand. I think you can unmute yourself. I'll make sure. Mark, you need to tell us if that's the right procedure to do it. So Justin, I'm going to allow you to talk. I hope that works. Unmute yourself, Justin.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks for letting me speak, Mac. This
No
is
problem.
Justin Franklin, First Coast TCO here in Jacksonville, Florida. I just wanted to say that for the online vending community in the state, we need to make our voices heard. They're not being heard. The kava bars are very organized and they're doing a good job. They've got a lobbyist working on their particular parts of the bill. We don't have that. So it's up to us to make sure these legislators understand they're going to kill this small business in the state. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of vendors from out of state who don't care about the regulations and they'll happily ship into the state. So they're not going to be protecting anyone from anything. Vendors like myself, we followed the KCPA since it's been implemented. We've been an AKA GMP vendor since 2019. We have a third-party app in place on the website that already confirms IDs and ages of anyone that is under those provisions of the law. So we need to contact the committee members. I've already done it. Every single committee member in this agricultural natural resources budget committee that is next to hear the bill, I've already contacted every one of them. My wife's done it as well. We need to get everyone that we know that cares about this issue to do that, because they need to hear that the proposed regulations in this bill are going to kill online vending in the state, and it's just going to drive all that business to other states. And that's basically what I had to say. And I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak.
Glad to. And Justin, thank you for everything you do. You're a hero, and I've seen you over the years, and you're willing. This is a perfect time to say something that's obvious. We don't agree or have to agree 100% of the time. And I think that there are legitimate discussions, and I know Justin has had some criticism of us in the past, and some of it warranted, some of it he's completely wrong on. But we ought to have these discussions, and it's valuable. And so I appreciate very much not only your willingness to step up here and the call to action that is absolutely true for individuals in the state of Florida to reach out individually to those members is extremely valuable. So thanks for doing that. Anyone else that wanted to say anything, you can raise your hand and we'll recognize you to speak.
The reason why it's important for you to also say your wife has done it, because if there's anybody else that's listening, then and they're the owner of, of their business, they can also have their spouse do the exact same thing, and it's double the hits.
What would happen?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Thank you. Okay, it looks like that we've exhausted this. I will report back to you as best we can here over the next couple of days. I'm going to be jumping around a little bit around the states in Texas, then up to Rhode Island, and then we're headed to another meeting in Florida at the end of the week. So, but we'll catch up. We'll tell you, stand by your emails, and we'll give you updates as we can. And if we need to, we'll convene another meeting like this. So, thanks to everyone for all that you do to keep Kratom legal and safely formulated and properly labeled and age restricted.